The phone rang while I was reviewing a merger agreement at the kitchen table. I remember the exact clause because I had to read it 3 times after I hung up. Section 4 when indemnification provisions. The screen showed an unfamiliar number with a local area code. I answered with my full name, the way I always do. "Oh," said a woman's voice, professional but suddenly uncertain. "I'm sorry, I was trying to reach Michael Brennan." "You have the wrong number," I said. There was a pause, long enough that I almost ended the call. Then she said, "Is this about the Thursday appointment?" "I don't have a Thursday appointment." Another pause. I could hear her breathing, the faint rustle of papers. "I apologize," she said. "My mistake." The line went dead. I set the phone down and stared at the contract without reading it. Michael Brennan was my wife's maiden name. Michael was not a name anyone in our family carried. The woman had sounded like a receptionist or scheduler, calm and practiced until the moment turned strange. I thought about calling back, but decided against it. Sometimes wrong numbers are just wrong numbers. But the unease stayed with me, a small stone in my shoe. I'm a man who notices details. It is what made me successful in corporate law, and it is what keeps my home life ordered and predictable. I wake at 5:30, make coffee in the same blue mug, read the news on my tablet while the house is still quiet. My wife sleeps later, rises around 7, moves through the morning with her own rhythms. We have been married 23 years. Our daughter finished graduate school last spring and lives 2 states away. The house feels larger now, the silence is longer, but we have adjusted. That evening I made dinner while my wife worked in her study upstairs. Chicken, roasted vegetables, a green salad, simple food prepared without shortcuts. She came down at 6:15, wearing the reading glasses she pretends she does not need, and smiled when she saw the table set. "Smells good," she said. "Long day?" "The usual. She teaches history at the community college, 3 classes a semester. She's been doing it for 15 years. I know her routine the way I know the drive to my office. We ate and talked about ordinary things, a colleague's retirement party, a leak in the upstairs bathroom that needed attention. She did not mention any appointments, and I did not mention the phone call. But I watched her hands as she cut her chicken, the way her gaze drifted to the window between bites. Small gestures I had seen 1,000 times, now backlit by a question I could not name. After dinner, I washed the dishes while she returned to her study. I dried my hands and stood in the kitchen, listening to the faint sound of her voice upstairs. She was on the phone, speaking too quietly for me to make out words. It could have been a friend. It could have been a student. It could have been anyone. I went to my office and opened my laptop, intending to finish the merger review. Instead, I found myself typing Michael Brennan into a search engine paired with our city name. The results were sparse and unrelated. I tried adding therapist to the search. Nothing useful appeared. I closed the browser and sat in the dim light, feeling foolish and invasive at once. 3 days passed without incident. Then my phone buzzed with a text message from the same unfamiliar number. "Reminder, appointment tomorrow, Thursday, 2 p.m., Dr. Sarah Chen." I stared at the screen. I had no appointment with anyone named Dr. Sarah Chen. I had no appointments at all tomorrow except a conference call at 3. I called the number. It rang 4 times and went to a generic voicemail. I hung up without leaving a message. That night, I asked my wife if she knew anyone named Sarah Chen. We were getting ready for bed. She was brushing her teeth at the sink. She paused, toothbrush in hand, met my eyes in the mirror. "No," she said. "Why?" "Just a name that came up at work." She rinsed and put the toothbrush away, her movements smooth and habitual. "Doesn't ring a bell." I nodded and said nothing more. But I had seen the flicker in her expression, gone before it fully formed. A lawyer learns to read faces the way a musician reads notes. She was lying, or at least withholding, and she knew that I suspected it. The next morning I cleared my schedule and drove to the address listed in an online directory for Dr. Sarah Chen, licensed clinical psychologist. It was a small professional building on the east side of town, red brick with tinted windows and a parking lot that needed resurfacing. I sat in my car and waited. At 1:50, my wife's sedan pulled into the lot. I watched her park 3 spaces from the entrance, check her phone, and walk inside. She wore a gray cardigan I had given her 2 Christmases ago and carried her brown leather purse. She moved without hesitation, like someone keeping a routine. I waited until 2:15, then went inside. The lobby was narrow and beige, with a sign directing visitors to Suite 201. I climbed the stairs and found myself in a hallway with 4 doors. One had a small brass plate, Dr. Sarah Chen, LMFT. I stood outside, listening. Voices, faint and muffled. I could not make out words, but I recognized my wife's cadence. I left the building and sat in my car until 3:30. My wife emerged alone, walking slowly, her face composed but tired. She drove away without looking in my direction. I followed at a distance, watched her stop at a grocery store, then head home. By the time I arrived an hour later, she was unpacking produce in the kitchen. "How was your day?" I asked. "Quiet," she said, "caught up on some grading." I nodded and went to my office. I sat at my desk and made a list on a legal pad. Facts, not feelings. The call, the name, the appointment reminder, the drive to the therapist, the lie. I stared at the list until the words stopped making sense, then locked the pad in my desk drawer. That evening, I searched for Dr. Sarah Chen's practice website. It was minimal, professional, offering individual and couples therapy. At the bottom of the About page was a contact form. I filled it in, using a variation of my first name and a secondary email address I kept for client correspondence. I wrote that I was interested in scheduling an initial consultation and left my cell number. Dr. Chen called the next morning. Her voice was warm, slightly formal. "I received your inquiry. I have an opening Friday at 4 if that works for you." "Actually," I said, "I'm calling about an existing patient, my wife." Silence. Then, carefully, "I can't discuss other patients. Her name is listed as Margaret Brennan in your system, but her legal name is Margaret Lawson. My name is attached to her account as Michael Brennan." More silence. I could hear her breathing, measured and controlled. "I think there's been some confusion." "Has there?" "I can't confirm or deny any patient relationship. If you have concerns, you should speak directly with your wife. She told me she's never heard of you." Dr. Chen's tone shifted, became colder. "Then I have nothing more to say. Please don't contact this office again." The line went dead. I set the phone on my desk and looked out the window at the oak tree in the backyard, its branches bare against the gray November sky. My hands were steady. My mind was clear. Something had broken between my wife and me, and I needed to know what it was and when it had started. I called our cell phone provider that afternoon and requested detailed billing records for the past 6 months. They arrived by email within an hour. I opened the spreadsheet and filtered my wife's number, sorting by frequency. The unfamiliar number appeared 47 times. Calls lasting between 30 and 50 minutes, always on Tuesday and Thursday afternoons. I printed the records and placed them in a folder. Then I called our bank and requested copies of recent credit card statements. My wife and I kept separate cards but shared access to accounts. The statements showed regular charges to Chen Counseling Services dating back 11 months, $80 every Tuesday and Thursday, over $3,000 total. I sat with these facts and let them settle. My wife had been seeing a therapist nearly a year. She had created an alternate identity to do so, using her maiden name and assigning me a first name I did not have. She had lied to my face when I asked her directly. And the therapist had called me by accident, revealing a structure of deception that might have continued indefinitely. I did not feel angry. I felt something colder and more clarifying. I had spent decades negotiating contracts, exposing liabilities, protecting clients from their own blind spots. Now I would apply that same discipline to my marriage. That weekend, my wife drove to a book club meeting on Saturday afternoon. As soon as she left, I went to her study and began a methodical search. I did not rush. I wore thin gloves from the garage to avoid leaving prints on anything I touched, an old habit from evidence review. I started with her desk drawers, moving papers carefully, photographing their positions so I could return everything exactly as I found it. In the bottom drawer, beneath a stack of old syllabi, I found a small journal with a green cloth cover. I opened it and saw my wife's handwriting, entries dated across the past year. I photographed each page, then replaced the journal precisely where it had been. The entries were fragmentary, written in a style that suggested therapeutic exercises. Today, SC asked me why I stay. I said stability. She asked what stability costs. I didn't have an answer. Another. He doesn't see me anymore. I'm furniture, functional and ignored. And later, SC suggested I consider what I want instead of what I'm supposed to want. I don't know how to do that. SC, Dr. Sarah Chen. And he was me. I returned everything to its place, removed the gloves, and downloaded the photos to an encrypted folder on my laptop. Then I sat in my office and read the entries 3 times, slowly, as if they were written in a language I was still learning. My wife saw me as distant, functional, a man who provided stability but no warmth. The words were not cruel, but they carried a quiet devastation. I tried to remember the last time we had talked about something that mattered, the last time I had asked her a question I did not already know the answer to. The memories felt thin and far away, but none of this explained the false name. None of this explained why she had built a separate identity to talk to a therapist. I was missing something, some deeper layer that would make the picture complete. Monday morning, I took a long lunch and drove back to Dr. Chen's office building. I parked across the street where I could see the entrance. At 1:40, my wife arrived. She went inside and stayed for exactly 50 minutes. When she emerged, she sat in her car for a long time, her head bowed, hands on the steering wheel. Then, she drove away. I went inside and climbed the stairs to Suite 201. The door was locked. I knocked, heard footsteps, and Dr. Chen opened it. She was younger than I expected, perhaps 40, with dark hair pulled back and glasses with thin silver frames. "I asked you not to come here," she said. "I need to understand something. I can't help you. Why did she use her maiden name? Why am I listed as Michael Brennan?" Dr. Chen's expression tightened. She glanced down the hallway, then stepped back. "You need to leave." "Is she afraid of me?" The question stopped her. She looked at me directly, evaluating. "I don't know you. But she's told you about me." "I can't discuss that." "Then tell me this. Is she in danger? From me?" Dr. Chen crossed her arms. "Are you trying to intimidate me?" "I'm trying to understand why my wife created a false identity to see you." She was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, very softly, "Maybe you should ask yourself why she felt she needed to." She closed the door. I stood in the hallway, feeling the weight of her words settle over me like snow. That night I made dinner again. Salmon, rice, steamed broccoli. My wife came down at the usual time. We ate in near silence, the sound of forks on plates filling the space between us. I watched her push rice around with her fork, her gaze distant. "Are you happy?" I asked. She looked up, startled. "What? Are you happy? With us? With this?" Her face went very still. "Why are you asking?" "Because I don't know the answer." She set her fork down slowly. "I'm fine." "That's not what I asked." Her hands folded in her lap. "What do you want me to say?" "The truth." She laughed, a small, bitter sound. "The truth is complicated." "Then uncomplicate it." She stood, her chair scraping against the floor. "I need to finish some work." She left the kitchen, her footsteps quick on the stairs. I cleared the table and washed the dishes, my movements automatic. Then I went to my office and opened the encrypted folder. I read the journal entries again, looking for patterns, for the precise moment when distance had become deception. One entry stood out. SC asked if I've considered telling him. I said I'm not ready. She asked what ready looks like. I don't have an answer for that either. Telling me what? I scrolled through the other entries, but the subject remained vague. Feelings, frustrations, small resentments accumulated over years, but nothing concrete, nothing that would require secrecy and false names. I spent the next 2 days calling therapists in the area, posing as someone seeking care. I asked about intake procedures, confidentiality, record keeping. Every therapist I spoke to explained that patient information was protected, but they used real names and standard protocols. None of them suggested using pseudonyms unless there were safety concerns. Safety. The word kept circling back. Dr. Chen's question. Are you trying to intimidate me? The false name suggesting my wife wanted to hide from me or hide me from the therapist. But hide what? Thursday evening, I found my wife in the living room, reading. I sat across from her and waited until she looked up. I know you've been seeing Dr. Chen, I said. Her face went pale. The book slipped from her hands. What? For almost a year, twice a week, using your maiden name. She stood abruptly. You've been spying on me. A therapist called me by accident, used a name I didn't recognize. I looked into it. So you went through my things? I went through our phone records, our bank statements, things I have legal access to. Her hands were shaking. You had no right. You lied to me. You created a fake identity. I want to know why. She turned away, her shoulders tight. Because I needed to talk about you without you controlling it. Controlling it? You control everything, she said, her voice rising. The way we eat, the way we spend money, the way we talk. You measure and assess and document every single thing. I needed one space that was mine. Then why not just tell me you were seeing someone? She whirled to face me. Because you would have asked who and why and what we talked about. You would have analyzed it like one of your contracts. You would have made it about fixing a problem instead of understanding me. I sat back, her words landing like stones. Is that how you see me? That's how you are. We stood in the silence that followed, the air between us dense and suffocating. Then I said, very quietly, Why Michael Brennan? She closed her eyes. It's the name I would have used if I'd never married you. The words hit harder than I expected. A whole alternate identity, a version of herself unconnected to me. I felt something crack inside my chest, a clean break I could not name. Do you want a divorce? I asked. She opened her eyes and I saw tears there, unshed and bright. I don't know what I want. Then what do you want to figure out? Whether I can stay and still be myself. I stood and walked to the window, looking out at the dark yard. You could have talked to me. Could I? Her voice was soft now, defeated. When was the last time you asked me a real question? When was the last time you looked at me and saw someone instead of something to manage? I had no answer. The truth was, I could not remember. Somewhere in the accumulation of years and routines, I had stopped seeing her as a person with her own interior life and started seeing her as a component of our shared existence. Stable, functional, reliable. I'm sorry, I said. For what? For making you feel like you had to hide. She sat down slowly, her hands in her lap. I don't know if sorry is enough. Then what is? I don't know that either. We sat in the living room until the silence became unbearable. Then she went upstairs. I stayed in the chair, watching the darkness deepen outside, and tried to imagine a version of our marriage where she felt seen. I could not find it. The image kept dissolving, replaced by the comfortable routines and careful distances we had built together. The next morning, I called a family therapist, whose name I found through a referral service. I explained the situation in brief clinical terms. She listened without interrupting, then asked, What do you want from therapy? I want to understand what I did wrong. Is that the same as wanting to fix your marriage? I hesitated. I don't know. Then maybe we start there. I booked an appointment for the following week. That evening I told my wife what I had done. She looked surprised, then wary. You don't need to do this for me, she said. I'm not. I'm doing it for myself. She studied my face, searching for something. Okay. Will you come with me? Eventually? Maybe. If you actually go. I went. The therapist's name was Dr. Reeves, and she worked in a small office downtown with plants on every surface. She asked me about my marriage, my work, my relationship with control. I answered honestly, or as honestly as I knew how. At the end of the session, she said, You're very good at explaining, but you haven't told me how you feel. I feel like I failed, I said. Why? Because my wife had to create another identity to talk about me. Do you think she was trying to hurt you? No, I think she was trying to survive me. Dr. Reeves nodded slowly. That's a start. Over the next 3 months, I went to therapy every week. My wife continued seeing Dr. Chen, and I did not ask her about it. We moved through the house like careful strangers, polite and distant, But something had shifted. I started asking her questions at dinner, real questions, not administrative ones. How her day felt, not just what she did, what she was reading, not just whether she had finished grading. At first she answered cautiously, as if testing whether I was sincere. But gradually the answers grew longer, more personal. She told me about a student who reminded her of our daughter, about a book she was reading on women's history, about a dream she'd had where she was teaching in a language she did not speak. I listened. I did not analyze or assess. I just listened. One evening in early spring, she came into my office while I was working. She stood in the doorway, hesitant. "Dr. Chen suggested we might try couples therapy," she said. "With her?" "No, with someone new, someone neutral." I closed my laptop. "I'd like that." She nodded, then turned to leave, but she paused and looked back. "Thank you," she said, "for trying." We started couples therapy in April. The therapist was older, a woman with a calm, measured presence who let silences stretch until they became comfortable. In our third session, she asked my wife why she had used a false name with Dr. Chen. My wife looked at me, then at the therapist. "Because I needed to talk about him without him being in the room." "And now?" "Now he's listening." The therapist turned to me. "Is she right?" I thought about the question, about the months of effort and discomfort and slow, painful realignment. "I'm trying," I said. "Is trying enough?" the therapist asked my wife. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "I think it might be." We left the session and walked to the car in silence. As I unlocked the doors, she said, "I'm going to stop seeing Dr. Chen." "Why?" "Because I don't need to hide anymore." I looked at her across the roof of the car, this woman I had lived beside for over 2 decades and had somehow stopped seeing. "I'm glad," I said. She smiled, small and tentative. "Me too." That night we made dinner together for the first time in years. It was awkward, our rhythms mismatched, but we managed. We ate at the table and talked about ordinary things, but the quality of the conversation had changed. There was space in it, room for uncertainty and real feeling. Later, as I was washing dishes, she came up beside me and took a towel. We worked in silence, passing plates and glasses between us. When we finished, she said, "I'm not sure we're going to make it." I dried my hands slowly. "I know, but I'm willing to try." "So am I." She looked at me, her eyes clear and serious. "No more measuring, no more managing. If you want this to work, you have to let me be messy." "I don't know if I know how to do that." "Then we'll figure it out together." I nodded, and she reached out and took my hand. Her grip was firm, grounding. We stood in the kitchen, holding on, while the evening settled around us like a truce. Months later, I would think about that phone call, the wrong name that broke everything open. I would think about Dr. Chen's face in the hallway, my wife's journal hidden in a drawer, the careful architecture of lies built not from malice but from desperation. And I would understand that the betrayal was not hers alone. I had betrayed her too, in smaller, quieter ways, by turning her into someone I managed instead of someone I loved. We are still married. We still go to therapy. Some days are harder than others, but when I look at her now, I see a person, complex and separate and real. And when she looks at me, I hope she sees someone trying, imperfectly but genuinely, to meet her where she is. The phone number that started it all is still in my call history. I have not deleted it. Sometimes I scroll past it and feel a strange gratitude. A wrong number, a stranger's mistake, the smallest crack that let the light in.